Hi all, my name is Luca Guidi. I'm Jodosh on Twitter and Lotus RB is the hashtag if you want to keep the conversation going after this talk and this conference will be over. I'm interested into your feedback. This version or this edition of RubyDay was great. I enjoyed all the talks that I attended to. I hope you did as much I did. We have seen a lot of interesting cases about for the use cases for Ruby. We talked about algorithms this morning. We have seen how it can be a bridge across other systems. For instance, there was the Opal Lightning talk. And we have talked about security in the debugging HTTP APIs. So there is one thing about Ruby that now it's old, but it's good to apply on several fields. And of course, you already know all those things. What I want to talk about today is the future of the language. So thanks for being here today and for being part of this community, even if we are not cool anymore as Rubists, as we used to be years ago. You remember the days when we were, the hyped community. Now we are not like that anymore. And thank you, because I understand there are greener grasses on the other side of the fence. There are shiny new languages. They are faster, they are safer, they are concurrent. So thanks for still being part of this community. Some of us are migrating to those greener grasses, and those new languages are really interesting, and we should learn lessons from them and why people are moving away from this community towards other communities. They are now the cool kids, right? And even Java today is hyped again. With Java 8, they have functional language, so they are now hyped again. They are cool again. Now, of course, those are just stupid jokes that I want to share with you. Since now on, I want just to consider if Ruby can be the language that will be used for the next 10 years to build something serious for our companies. So let's talk about the future of Ruby. I don't know how many of you, please raise your hands, have ever asked yourself if Ruby will die. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only pessimist in the room. Of course, I asked this question myself a lot of times. First, because of my career, which is focused for most of my career. I worked with Ruby, so I wanted to know if my skills were still relevant for at least the next couple of years. And the second reason is Lotus, which is a huge commitment, okay, in terms of time, support, code. I wanted to give back to open source in a language that would be still meaningful for the future. So I think that a language doesn't die, at least for legacy. That means think of COBOL, right? Nobody is longer inspired by COBOL. Nobody wants to learn it. There is no community. I don't know if there is a COBOL conf somewhere, but I'm not aware of it. So now we will probably want to avoid that Ruby will become the next COBOL, right? We are freaked about this thing. So we should seriously think what to do as of today to let our language to prosper for the future. So before to leave the room and the community, please don't do, at least not during my talk, let's just calm down and look at the programming language rank. These are the most recent stats as of November 2015. Ruby is in the 9th position, and this is the rate of adoption of all the other hyped languages around there. This is not about numbers, but we are still in a dominant position, even if we probably we feel as under attack because of those new languages. But this, of course, depicts the present, depicts the adoption as of today. Let's imagine the future, the next couple of years, the next 5 years. I see it as a polyglot because thanks to Docker, we are now able to pick the right tool for the job and to easily deploy it. Back in the days, until 5 years ago, we used it to write everything with Ruby for 2 reasons. The first one was we had Ruby developers, right? And if we needed to squeeze some performance from some specific task, we had to descend to hell and use C or C++, and the jump is too big for developers who have a background on a high-level language like Ruby. And the second reason was about the money and time investment in maintaining and running a Ruby infrastructure, right? Now, fast forwarding to today, those modern system languages are more developer-friendly. Their syntax resembles, sometimes with features like type inference, they look like dynamic language. And you don't have to manage the memory manually, like we used to do with C or C++. And the second reason is would be less and less relevant if we continue the shift towards cloud computing and containers. Because if I have to write a Clojure app, I don't have to invest money in that. I can pull a Docker image for that and deploy it. That cost of maintenance is now open sourced. Okay, so it's not a cost that our company needs to pay. Now, I don't know how many of you are working on a product. I've seen a few of them in the last couple of years, and I observed this trend. All the companies that I worked with are now migrating away from Ruby for tasks where performance is critical. Now we have Go, which is the most natural candidate, at least for my direct experience. So that is a reasonable choice. And because of those new languages that they are now much more easier to do system programming, Ruby adoption will probably shrink in the next couple of years. What still stays with Ruby are web apps, because web apps are larger than those microservices. Go is not a reasonable choice to write and maintain large code bases like web applications are as of today, and because they are a fast-moving target, we keep deploying our web apps several times a day because we need to do small improvements. We want to be perceived as a dynamic product, so we keep shipping, reshaping the product, shipping new features. So, just to recap, I think that Ruby is here to stay, so don't be afraid of those new languages. Well, but the mistake that Ruby is doing is try to catch those languages in a field where we can easily lose the battle. I'll give you one example, concurrency. Now, Ruby was invented in an era when computing means to deal just one CPU. It's inspired by C, Perl, and Smalltalk, and those were languages for a single CPU computing era. Now, those modern languages were born in a concurrent era, and they had to solve this problem since day zero. And since now on, no new languages will be invented without the need of solve concurrency. So there is no chance that Ruby will catch those languages for this kind of features and for the performance that Erlang or Go or Rust give us for concurrency. Now, I don't know if you had the chance to attend to Matt's keynote a couple of months ago. He did a keynote he gave a keynote in Barcelona at Full Stack Fest, and he mentioned the experiments that the Ruby core team is doing for 3.0. He mentioned actor-based concurrency model. He mentioned pipelines, which are concepts borrowed from other languages. Now, the bottom line of all those experiments was we cannot make promises, right? Because the cost of that kind of change, that means to break all the existing applications out there. That means our products. So the companies who invested in Ruby will basically throw away their investment. Or Ruby 3.0 will take 15 years, like Perl 6 to go out. So, in my opinion, it's an error to try to catch those languages in those kind of fields. What we should do is to reflect and find a new sense of purpose for Ruby in a landscape, in a competitive landscape like this. That means it has to become a first-class solution for a well-defined set of problems. I'll give you one example of this. If, as of today, I have to write a command line application, I will end up choose Go instead of Ruby. Sorry, guys. But the thing is that Go is faster on average. It has a good standard library for argument parsing. It's compiled, so I don't have to install the Ruby VM, Ruby gems, the gems, and the source code. I can just drop the binary on the production servers. It has cross-compile feature. That means I can use my computer to produce the binaries for several architecture and several operating systems. So, well-defined problem, command line application, Go is the first-class solution. So, we need to find where and when and how Ruby shines in a certain specific problems. And to do that, let's have a look at the present and some interesting uses of the language. First of all, Homebrew, which is the missing packet manager for macOS. Now, you may think that the next generation Homebrew will be written with Go, with Rust, because those are low-level languages. This is low-level stuff, so it makes sense. But if we go beyond this observation, we can wonder what really made Homebrew such a successful project. Well, in my opinion, it's they lowered the entry level for contribute to the project. Let's have a look at their recipes. They are called formula in their terminology. Look at the end of those highlighted lines. You can refer to the version of macOS by its nickname defined as a symbol. You can define dependencies with depends on OpenSSL. This is no longer a programming language. This is almost a natural language. Reads like English, right? But I guess this is nothing new to all of you because you know Ruby. But you should not take for granted the natural way and the expressiveness that Ruby can provide to the entire landscape of programming languages. So thanks to this beautiful DSL, Homebrew now has almost 4,000 formula, and it's a successful project. ORMs. I need to fetch a few records from the database and make them available as Ruby objects. That Ruby syntax is translated into SQL. Like you have seen Sonic PI this morning, like this Ruby code is translated into music, right? Now, I don't know if you ever tried to use Ableton on complex music software to produce music, to create music. You just give up after 1 hour. But here you can teach near everyone to play music with instant gratification. And this is a DSL for music. Now, let's try to do this with Java. Right? So, thanks to its expressiveness, Ruby can build bridges that reach complex systems. Think of Sonic PI, we build a bridge towards the music. Think of Elixir, which is an interesting experiment. Erlang syntax was too much hard, so invented a language that is an hybrid, and we are now encouraged to use that platform because it resembles like Ruby. There is Opal that transpiles JavaScript Ruby into JavaScript. And if you look at the Go counterpart of Homebrew, which is Docker, for the provisioning part, it still uses bash commands, which are ugly. Now, imagine if you can bring the power of Go, the lower level stuff, and use the Ruby syntax with that. So I think one of the keys for the future is to use mRuby or Ruby in a situation where the target system is too hard, it's too complex, and we can lower the entry level of contribution. Now, think if your database can natively speak Ruby, think if Nginx can do that, think of Arduino. All those things are now available with mRuby, which is a way to make our beloved language to survive. I wrote this, if you're interested, I wrote this blog post last year on how to script Redis with mRuby. Let's check it out. Now, until now we talked about software, we talked about how Ruby, it's easy to read. But it's easy to read not for the computer, not for the CPU, which only understand instructions. It's understandable for people. So let's talk about humans for a second. Now, we mentioned that a language without a community is dead. We talked about a couple just for fun. So those are, most of you are looking for new engineers, and there is a desperate demand for engineers. Here, you're engineers for the future. Those are kids, we are creating music with Sonic PI. Those are kids playing with Hello Ruby, which is a book that teaches 5-year-old kids how to program through Ruby. There is Ramon this morning shared his experience by teaching kids and introduced them to computer science. Those are people who are learning Ruby and web development, and Ruby can be the entry point for that. So let's imagine us like in the middle of the community. Those people can expand our community on the bottom line. They are the future engineers, the engineers that we are looking now, and they are of course junior. But we should welcome them. We should keep them safe and include them in our community, and that can make Ruby great. And on the other side of the spectrum, if they are the junior that may enter our community, on the other side we can improve our ecosystem to attract skilled engineers that they need to resolve some specific problem and they will do with Ruby. Then we get back to the problem of the first class solution, okay? So let's talk about the web, which is the second big challenge that we need to make, again, great for Ruby. But we talked about, until now, about the language, and we haven't talked about Rails yet, okay? I used it for most of my career. Since 1.0 was out, I had the chance to contribute to Ruby on Rails, and I've seen a lot of use cases, a lot of applications, small apps, new apps, big and old apps. And they do all the same mistakes, especially if they are at least 1 year old. I know that you know what I'm talking about, right? One common problem was about huge controllers that's supposed to be skinny, right? Now, it's not for the Rails, but in my opinion, it lacks of guidance for long-term vision, and it's now a kind of bloated stack. They kept adding a set of features, but they didn't change their recipe. And now let's try to attract a C++ engineer and tell them they need half a gigabyte or 1 gigabyte to run one instance of Rails. They will run away for sure. So we need to improve this situation. And the last thing is that it's too magic. So it can be, the learning curve can discourage new people, that kids that we have seen, or expert and skilled engineers that they don't want to lose too much time to understand the Rails magic. Now, speaking of teaching with teaching web development through Ruby. This guy here is a Rails teacher in Berlin, and he said that they are no longer using Rails, but they use Sinatra or Lotus to teach web development to totally beginners, because they kept constantly saying, deferring explanation because it's too much overwhelming for a newcomer to say, hey, what is this? Please trust me, I'll give you an explanation in a couple of weeks. And they said that with Sinatra, with Lotus, they had the chance to build one piece at a time, and it was a more satisfying learning path, both for the students and the teachers. Which brings us to the Lotus philosophy. I started it as an experiment 3 years ago. A secret experiment on my computer. I wanted to build something really, really lightweight. And I said, okay, let's try to see if I can build something really, really minimal on top of Rack to send HTML to a browser, which is in the end the final goal of a web app. So that was satisfying, that was rewarding, so I kept expanding the scope of the experiment. I eventually open sourced it at the beginning of last year, and I built a community. I kept releasing stuff, and now I've quit my day job to work just to do unpaid work on that, because I truly believe that this can be something to make again Ruby a really strong alternative for web development. So I said that it was an experiment, but I wanted to keep the good part of Rails, because I think that it changed the way that we write web apps. I don't know how many of you have a PHP or Java background. It totally changed the game, and most of us are here in this room because of Rails, and I wanted to offer the same level of features, and those are the features offered as of today. We have a lot of stuff, okay? I'll leave you this for 1 second to give you the chance to read through it. It's a lot of stuff, almost all the stuff that we have in Rails. But if you look at the memory footprint of a new generated Sinatra, Lotus, and Rails app, you can spot a difference. This experiment was made on my computer. I created a fresh new application, started it in production mode with Puma. Okay, you can see the number of dependencies and the number of the memory footprint. There is a correlation in that, and I explain that in a minute. So Sinatra has almost 20 megabytes, Lotus 23, and Rails 69. So I wanted to share this with you to try to understand that it's possible to be lightweight as a Sinatra, but offer the same level of convenience, the same level of productivity that Rails has. And this can be attractive for engineers from other languages. Now, I know that this may sound impossible to have the best of both worlds, but I have to confess that I'm obsessed by performance. I kept running benchmarks, and I tracked the memory allocation of the framework, so it was born under that perspective. I wanted to, my obsession helped to keep the memory footprint so low. I know there is a lot of room for improvement, but that will happen in the future. Now we are good to go, because I'm proud of this result. And the other reason is that I've turned down all the code contribution that wanted to include third-party gems to the stack. Now, what happens with third-party gems? When you install a new gem because you need something to get something done, what happens? You use 10%, 20% of that gem. That means the remaining 80%, it's in memory, but it's useless from your web app perspective. So I closed the pull request. I was sorry to do that, but I was more keen to implement the same feature without third-party gems. That means Lotus depends only on a few gems, but you are sure that all the code that's loaded in memory is useful for your perspective, for the perspective of your web app. the other important point of Lotus philosophy is to provide a complete framework. That means Lotus goes beyond flat MVC, and it offers a new set of collaborators. Now, flat MVC is, with this term, I mean the tendency to overload MVC layers until they explode. Now, this is fine for the first year of your application, first 2 years, but then once your application grows in terms of complexity, features, lines of code, it's overkilling to try to overload all that complexity with those only 3 layers. Okay, that's why we have gigantic controllers. We have fat models and fat controllers in the end. So the new set of collaborators is, for instance, Lotus offer presenters. So if you have a gigantic entity, you can put it on diet and extract that presentational logic into a presenter. It offers service objects that in Lotus terminology are called interactors. So if the complexity of your current use case is too much for just one action and a bunch of models, you can extract that logic there, you can better test it, and perhaps share it across several use cases of your app. Now, those collaborators are not mandatory. I'm not telling you to use service objects since day 0, but once your application gets more and more complex, you need wonder nothing. You have the strong guidance from the framework. It tells you how to proceed when you are done with the 15 minutes blog, right? It guides you to maintain web apps in the long term. And that's if it's full MVC for me. It's a new set of collaborators around MVC layers. I already mentioned that I'm working just on this, and this helped for sure to speed up the development. I want to release Lotus 1.0 in a few months. I cannot tell you a date because I don't know. But we are working on a couple of features. We want to improve the API, especially for the model part. I don't know how many of you, please raise your hands, ever used Lotus or played with it. Okay. The model part is the last part I'm proud of. I want to improve it. I hate myself from time to time because it's too much verbose. So I want to reduce that complexity, that verbosity, sorry. Add new features, code stability, and then push out 1.0. Right now I'm working on the assets, which is something new that I want to share with you today. It's not yet released yet. It offers helpers for including all kind of static assets that your application needs. It opens the gate for third-party gems. That means we can have community-maintained gems for jQuery, for Bootstrap, whatever. It has a public API that allows you to bundle assets into gems and to distribute them. It works with preprocessors. That means it supports ECMAScript 6, it supports SAS, it supports LESS. All the preprocessors that you want to use, they are there already supported. And it has deployment features. Now, don't be scared. I know that with the Rails counterpart that's called the asset pipeline, you have slow deploys. And this is something that I want to avoid at all. First of all, what happens when you will deploy a web app with Lotus? It will look at the sources from third-party gems for your applications. They are copied, shrinked. They are made cacheable by browsers by appending the checksum at the end, and that's it. They will not be bundled together because resolving that tree of dependencies at deploy time is time-consuming. So the dependencies, the stuff that you need for a single specific page is defined by the JavaScript tag that you use, the script tag that you use in your application. So if your code depends on jQuery, you require jQuery first. And that is a kind of um, case, a specific case of Lotus philosophy. That means why do nice things if in the end they are slow or they make your application more and more complicated to deal with. So you deploy it, they are in the public directory and they are not bundled together. Because I wanted to at least split in half the time of deployment. And because today's good practices are HTTP anti-patterns. That means bundling together all those assets is a workaround that we invented to overcome the limits of HTTP1. Okay, that means with HTTP1, for each asset, the server has to open a socket to just send that specific asset. With HTTP2, which is a new binary protocol, it's multiplexed. That means one socket can serve multiple requests, multiple responses for the same client. I'm telling you about HTTP2 because one of the things that I'm doing is to ship experimental HTTP2 support for Lotus after 1.0 because I wanted to reduce the scope of 1.0. And I have a couple of interesting slides here. This is a test web app built with Lotus and using WebRick with a bunch of images. Look, this is Chrome Inspector. There are parallel image downloading. Now, there is one HTTP2 feature that's called push promise. That means you send the headers of your current response. You send a lot of packets. They are push promises. That means, hey, you're gonna need jQuery. Hey, you're gonna need Bootstrap. Hey, you're gonna need this logo. And the browser, once it receives that packet, it starts to download in background jQuery or the other assets, and then you send the body of the response. That means a faster page load time. They are all downloaded in parallel, and that will help a lot the performance of your application. Now, I've got to share a couple of repositories with you. The first one is a rack-compatible server that supports only HTTP2. Don't use it in production. It's just a toy, just a proof of concept. And the second one is the web app that I used for this experiment. And now, in case you are wondering how many languages and how many technologies are already supporting HTTP2 as a production-ready solution, 0. There is Nginx, is going to be out soon. It's Apache, is going to be out soon. There are just a couple of new web servers that are written with Go or C++ that are just supporting HTTP2, but these stuff can make Ruby relevant again and cutting edge solution for web development. So, as last thing about future plans, once all those features will be ready, before to release 1.0, I want you folks, I want to see next time that we will meet, I will see everybody saying, hey, I used Lotus at least for one day. Please, guys, this is the way to contribute to open source. Just visit this page and I'll let you know when it will be had, because I need your feedback. There are already companies that are deploying Lotus in production, but I need more and more use cases, because design a large and ambitious project like this is error prone, and I'm just one human, and you can help me on improve this vision. To stay updated, just consider to subscribe to the mailing list and I'll let you know when the Hack Day would be held. I'll let you know when Lotus 1.0 would be out. You can find guides here. I invested a lot of time in writing guides for everything, and there is a getting started guide that helps you to write a Lotus app in just 30 minutes. So if you have 30 minutes spare, just try it and let me know if it makes sense for you. I know that the ecosystem is still young, and I've talked with the people here in this room who are using it, try to deploy in production soon, or they are building something, and they, of course, complain because the ecosystem is not even comparable with the Rails Gems ecosystem, but that is the chance for you to make the history and to write something that is useful for Ruby and for Lotus. This is my blog where I write about Lotus and the reasons, technical reasons, and the technical decisions behind it. I write about Ruby as well, and I wanted to make this talk really, really short. I don't want to bore you with the Lotus details, so please check it out, the guides, and I guess there is time for questions.